A lustful look. We tend to think very casually about lust. Some people think sexually desiring another person, as long as one doesn't act upon it, doesn't hurt anybody. After all, everyone has lustful thoughts once in a while. Thoughts are harmless. Now, one may think what goes on in their mind is harmless, but it's not. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, verse 27 and 28 that even looking and thinking lustfully is sinful. It's not good for you, and it's not good for the other person. You see, there's something very significant going on when we have lustful thoughts. The 10th commandment in Exodus chapter 20, verse 17 prohibits coveting. Now, coveting is wanting to have something that belongs to someone else. One example given is coveting another person's ox or donkey. Well, back then, an ox and donkey were valuable animals. They were used for travel and labor. Today, it'd be like coveting your neighbor's new car or their in-ground pool. Another example in Exodus 20, verse 17 is coveting someone's wife, which is not a possession or an object, but a person. To covet someone's spouse is to want to possess that person. In other words, looking at someone with lustful intent is looking at someone as a means of gratifying a desire that you have. It's greed and selfishness. The person is a commodity for you to have. You remember King David? King David is a perfect example of lust and its consequences. King David saw a beautiful woman named Bathsheba. He desired her, and so he sent his palace guards to get her. Bathsheba was married. Her husband was a member of David's army who, at that very moment, was fighting in one of David's wars. Because David was the king, he had a lot of power over Bathsheba. She was his subject. She was a common person. Some people mistakenly believe that they had a passionate love affair. However, Scripture doesn't say Bathsheba consented to having sex with David. It simply says David sent his palace officers to bring her back to him, and he lay with her. And then it gets complicated. Bathsheba becomes pregnant. To pass it off as her husband's child, there's a botched attempt to get him back home for a conjugal visit. But that fails. Well, David has a plan B. He arranges to have her husband killed in battle. After the death of her husband, Bathsheba is forced to marry David, and her and the child come to live with David in his palace. Now think about it. David forced himself on her. Bathsheba loses her honor, integrity, and her husband. It all began with a lustful look. That's all it took. David sees Bathsheba, and she is absolutely beautiful. He lingers and stares. He was staring at a woman, a person, a wife. But you see, to David at that moment, she was a possession to be taken. He coveted her. He was the king. He had a right to have her. Bathsheba was beautiful, and he wanted to take her and use her beauty, her body, to gratify himself. That got the whole chain of events moving that would leave Bathsheba widowed, pregnant, and forced to marry David. It would have never happened if he hadn't had that first look. If it hadn't happened first in his heart. He committed adultery with her in his heart before he physically committed adultery in his bedroom. Bathsheba, her husband, and the life she had was lost to David's lust. That's what lust does. It reduces how we see others. David lost his feelings, compassion, and kindness toward Bathsheba. He'd become indifferent, desensitized toward her. She was a commodity, a means to an end. You see, Jesus' teaching against lust is not just for the protection of the person being looked at, but for the person doing the looking. Lusting after someone, even in the privacy of their own mind, eventually harms both. In 1 Corinthians 10:13, it tells us that all problems are common. What happened with David and Bathsheba was not the first time it ever happened, nor the last. People are just as selfish, greedy, and lustful today. Thank you for watching.